in Brisbane said that she and her husband were hurt to have received two $5 towels from Kmart as a gift. Quoting, "Hey everyone, has anyone received a gift that was a slap in the face?" she asked. "We had a very exclusive wedding. It was all-inclusive and the focus were on our guests. But this hurt us a lot. Suggestions, and the suggestions came in droves, just not the ones she liked." So, Penny, you were a wedding celebrant. Two $5 towels, cheaper.
Kmart is amazing. I have got hand towels from Kmart and they're beautiful. I will have nothing said against Kmart. Ever since they changed their designers and buyers, it's been a delightful place to be at all times.
About that. Yeah, forget about Kmart. But look, you go to a wedding,
you go to a wedding because they're your friends and you love them.
And you wrap up two towels for $5. I mean, come on.
If they're from Kmart, they'll be beautiful.
No, seriously.
But this is another one of these bloody stories that's just a social media post that the news has taken and turned into a news story because one woman said something once and now we're talking about it.
Michael?
It did seem to me that there was a lot of focus on the fact that we're Kmart towels, not somebody else's towels.
Kmart's beautiful.
And I worried about that. Oh, look, I do not know. I do not know why somebody would voice, if you're sitting at a kitchen table and you're talking to your friends, you just say, "Look, we got these $5 towels and we don't like them." That's one thing, but why would you put it out in the world? And then because I just thought, how ungracious, how all of those things, how ridiculous to value anything about friendship on the basis of what's in wrapping paper. Mind you, as my wife will know, I do like presents. I'm quite fond of presents.
There's the answer.
Oh, just get some from Kmart.
It was shocking, wasn't it? Two $5 towels. We got it out of you in the end, Michael. All right.
Go and see shows at Circuit Theatre, ka kite.
Goodbye. Penny, Michael, see you later.
Cheers. Bye-bye.
Whakarongo mai koe ke te reo irirangi o Aotearoa. This is Checkpoint on RNZ National. I'm Lisa Owen. Haere aki nei, eating disorder services are at breaking point with the number of people seeking treatment doubling. We talked to a mother who was told her desperately ill daughter would have to go on a 6-month-long waiting list. Growers reckon fruit will still be left to rot despite 2,000 seasonal workers coming from the Pacific. The couple separated by COVID border closures, and from safari crew to coffee brew, the job switches forced by the virus. You've probably never Teamed, Googled or Zoomed so much in your life, but does staying at home mean work's greener? The Black Friday sales, bonza bargains or a broken credit card? Batter up, international cricket is back at Eden Park.
RNZ News at 5. Kia ora, ko Susana Leata with tēnei. The Senior Doctors Union says careful consideration should be given when making structural changes to the health sector. The new Health Minister Andrew Little made a call for changes when he addressed the Association of Salaried Medical Specialists annual conference in Wellington this morning. He referenced the Heather Simpson report into the sector, which proposed fewer DHBs within 5 years, saying it should be more like 18 months to 2 years. But the association's president, Professor Murray Barclay, says a major structural change is not a priority and rushing it may add to the pressures on DHBs and clinicians.
It really depends on which of those changes are taken up and how fast it goes, and I think he may need some more input on that.
Professor Murray Barclay. The Eating Disorders Association of New Zealand is at breaking point after a huge surge in young people seeking their help. Chairwoman Nikki Wilson says children as young as 8 years old are having to wait months to be seen for life-threatening disorders such as anorexia nervosa. The charity met today to discuss the unfolding crisis, which the association blames on a shortage of specialist workers and a lack of GP training. More on the story is coming up soon in Checkpoint. A seasonal seasonal worker contractor is still hopeful for an isolation hotel in Hastings after the government's announcement to bring seasonal workers into the country. There's a looming shortage of workers for the fruit picking season. 2,000 seasonal workers will be allowed to come through. The industry wants the Angus Inn in Hastings to be an isolation facility. Thornhill Contracting's Richard Bibby says the District Health Board's given it a tick, but it hasn't got the go-ahead from others yet.
I'm hearing now it's basically they haven't got the manpower to actually physically with Defence Force and also the police to manage that control. But it's certainly something I think that the health part of it, we appear to have got that covered off, and that's the main part of it.
The plan is still at the business case stage and has to get through more hoops before final sign-off. Finance Minister Grant Robertson says he's very optimistic a trial of regional banking hubs will eventually roll out across the country. Today he launched a hub which includes ANZ, ASB, BNZ, TSB, Kiwibank and Westpac in Martinborough. The other 3 towns that are part of the trial are Twizel, Stoke and Opunake. Mr Robertson says over the next year the banks will work out whether they need to offer more services as part of the trial.
It's challenging for them. What we've got here is the ability for the banks to provide basic banking services, but part of the trial is to see whether that's enough for people. Are there other things that we could manage?
Finance Minister Grant Robertson. New Zealand citizens or residents say they're back to square one as they battle for visas for their overseas partners. Those who do not come from visa waiver countries and do not have partnership visas are struggling to access border exemptions. One man says many are resorting to flying into COVID danger zones such as India to live sort visas and return with their partners. He says there is no logic in having New Zealanders run the risk of contracting coronavirus in order to fetch their spouses. New Zealand Post is gearing up for its busiest month of the year with Black Friday sales kicking off a massive surge in parcel deliveries. Its Chief Customer Officer Brian Dobson says the deliveries have continued to grow each year.
We're expecting from Monday next week, for the week, we'll pick up something like 2.1 million parcels, and this sort of kicks off the Christmas busy season for us in earnest, and we'll have probably 3 weeks of that sort of level of volumes as we head into Christmas.
Brian Dobson says New Zealand Post has been planning for months, employing hundreds of additional workers and making about 1,500 more transport runs up and down the country to ensure Christmas deliveries arrive on time. It's 5:04. The All Blacks are preparing for the Maradona factor come tomorrow night's test against Argentina in Australia. 3 days of national mourning is underway in Argentina in the wake of the football great's death earlier this week. Maradona was a big Pumas fan, often spending time with the team in the changing sheds after tests, and the players have publicly stated they want to honour him with a victory. The All Blacks, on the other hand, are desperate to win their final test of the year and avoid the embarrassment of a hat-trick of losses. Skipper Sam Cane knows Maradona's death will only make their task tougher.
He's viewed as like a godlike figure almost over there. So, yeah, it's pretty sad news. It's always sad when a great sportsman or woman passes away because I think everyone feels connected to the greats. So, I'm sure that'll be a bit of a driving factor for them.
All Blacks captain Sam Cane. The cricket great Shoaib Akhtar has reacted angrily to the prospect of the Pakistan team's tour of New Zealand being cancelled. The Ministry of Health has given the entire touring party a final warning after some players breached isolation protocols at their quarantine hotel in Christchurch. 6 of the team have also tested positive for COVID-19. Shoaib is upset by the interference the tour could be called off.
You're talking about the Pakistan, the greatest country on this planet. So behave yourself and stop giving this sort of statement against Pakistan. Tour khatam kar denge. So be careful what you say next time, because I'm very frustrated and angry that New Zealand has given that statement.
The Black Caps begin their domestic international season tonight when they play the West Indies in the first of 3 T20 games. That's the news.
Tomorrow morning, legendary talk show host Sir Michael Parkinson and his son Mike talk about fathers. Sir Michael's dad was wonderful. He himself was quite different. Ben Lowings has written a biography of sailor, adventurer David Lewis, and Cecilia Watson on that most divisive punctuation mark, the semicolon. Almost as divisive as how you say divisive. I'm Kim Hill. Join me tomorrow morning from 8 on RNZ National.
Now the short forecast from Met Service to midnight. Tomorrow, Northland to Taranaki, also Coromandel, Bay of Plenty and Central High Country. Generally fine, isolated showers tonight. Gisborne and Hawke's Bay mainly fine. A few showers spreading north tonight, clearing tomorrow morning. Whanganui to Wellington and Wairarapa, fine spells. Isolated showers developing, turning to rain for a time this evening, then becoming fine tomorrow morning. For Marlborough and Nelson, mostly fine. Showers about coastal Marlborough today. Bulla, Westland and Fiordland, fine apart from isolated showers. However, rain spreading north tomorrow afternoon and evening, possibly heavy. Canterbury, Otago and Southland, periods of rain or showers tonight, possibly heavy and thundery. High cloud tomorrow, scattered rain in the afternoon or evening. Chatham Islands, showers. RNZ National at 5:07.
Thanks, Susanna. Welcome to Checkpoint. I'm Lisa Owen. The mother of a teenager with anorexia and bulimia says children will die unless the government puts more money and resources into treating eating disorders. The demand for services has more than doubled this year, according to the Eating Disorders Association. And it says children as young as 8 are waiting weeks or even months to be seen by specialist services, despite having life-threatening illnesses. It's calling on the government to set up an expert panel to look at ways to boost services. Bridget's teenage daughter got seriously ill in February after dabbling in veganism. She was told the wait list was 6 months for a publicly funded community treatment program after initially taking her daughter to a GP.
After physically assessing her and so forth, she then said, look, just go home and eat, which to a child that's terrified of food, is unfortunately not very helpful. I'm sure her heart was in the right place, but it just wasn't terribly helpful. And she unfortunately sent the referral to the wrong place. And I don't think that's her fault. I think the GPs need a bit more information and education out there on how to handle these eating disorders and where to refer them to according to their district. It is quite a complicated system from what we found out. You get referred to mental health services first before you get then sent on to a specific eating disorder facility.
How hard was it to get into a treatment program?
Look, we saw a private psychologist, and once the psychologist sent it to the right place, we got a phone call saying there was a 5 to 6 month waiting list, which broke my heart. And I tried then to access private care, and we were also told that would be an 8-week wait, which, watching my daughter, we just didn't have 8 weeks. Day by day, you could see the deterioration. So we just were desperate for help. But it got to the point where she had to be admitted to hospital because she got so physically unwell. It is a psychiatric disorder that has severe physical ramifications. So we ended up in hospital, and that actually escalated us up the list to get into the actual eating disorder specialist care. But it also means that it's probably bumped somebody down the ladder as she got bumped up. And that concerns me a lot, that somebody else is not getting the care that they deserve.
So hang on a minute. You seek help, but your daughter does not get a place on the list until she's absolutely in critical condition and been hospitalised.
Well, that's been our case, and unfortunately, because she's 17, she doesn't qualify for Starship Hospital, which have probably more specialist treatment for eating disorders. Whereas once you go into adult hospital, you kind of end up on a different pathway. They're not equipped to deal with this. But yes, it seems to be that you have to have the severe physical criteria for hospital admission to then get bumped up the list. So yes, that's our experience. Yep.
Your family sought help from a private psychologist. Obviously, there's a cost attached to that, and also you looked at a private clinic for treatment. I mean, what sort of fees are associated with that when you looked at it?
So the psychologist, mostly around the $200 mark. I guess I never really got far down the track with the private eating disorder service, but I would say it would be of similar amount, $200, $250 an hour. These people are well qualified and specialised, but while you're waiting to get into even public healthcare, you have to go to your GP twice a week for monitoring for blood pressure and heart rate, because they get terribly low heart rates and low blood sugars and numerous other physical elements. And my GP costs $57 a visit, and so that's a lot of money for people to be shelling out twice a week while they're waiting to get the specialist care that they need.
How do you feel about that, and the fact that when you initially went, you were told 5 to 6 months for the public system?
Oh, devastated, absolutely heartbroken. We knew we had a problem. We just didn't know how to deal with it. We needed the help, and it was very hard to see into the future.
Bridget,
we couldn't recognise our child.
Were you scared that your daughter might die if she had to wait that long?
Yep. Yeah, I was. Yep. Very much so. Yep.
God, that must have been so stressful for a parent.
It is just a devastating illness, and I've obviously done a lot of reading now because we've been forced to, and the stats with anorexia, and it's the death rate from anorexia is very, very high in New Zealand. So
As you would appreciate, demand for eating disorder services has more than doubled, we're being told. What would you like to say to the Health Minister and the people who can make some changes in this area?
Oh, we have to fund it. We have to find a way to prioritise these kids. There are so many of them, and we can't have people being bumped down the waiting list as people who end up in hospital take their places, and they just deteriorate before your very eyes. It has to be addressed. We've had a rapid increase this year probably because of COVID, and we're going to lose kids if they don't seriously look at putting some more workers in there and funding it, because it's devastating. It's absolutely devastating.
How's your family and your daughter doing now?
We take it day by day. It's a real roller coaster. It's tough. It's really, really tough. I really had no idea with other people living with us what it was really like. Unfortunately, we found out the hard way, but she didn't choose it, we didn't choose it, and we're doing everything we possibly can to fight for her and get her well and get her life back.
And that's Bridget, whose teenage daughter is being treated for an eating disorder. Growers say fruit may still be left to rot, despite the government promising that 2,000 seasonal workers from the Pacific can come through the border to help with the harvest. They're saying thousands of workers are still needed, and Kiwis are hard to come by, so what can be done? Tom Kitchen filed this report.
A drop in the bucket. That's growers' response to today's announcement. And they also have to take a financial hit for it. The employers will have to pay isolation and hourly work rates, while the seasonal workers are locked down for 2 weeks in hotels. Well-known Hawke's Bay fruit grower John Bostock says this isn't about cost saving, it's that Kiwis willing to do the work are difficult to come by.
The number of able fit Kiwis to climb ladders and do the jobs are not available. It's not a question of price. We're paying more money. In this scheme, we're going to be paying the managed isolation facilities $4,700 per worker, plus 30 hours. So we're prepared to do that, but it's a question of finding the number of available and willing Kiwis and people to do it.
Mr Bostock says the RSE workers are more pricey for businesses, but they're great workers.
Well, it's looking like about $6,000 extra per worker compared to hiring a Kiwi. So the incentive is to hire a Kiwi, but they're just simply not available.
In an effort to get unemployed New Zealanders to take on seasonal work, the government is offering financial support. These include $200 per week for accommodation costs and a $1,000 incentive payment for workers who complete jobs of 6 weeks or more, and increasing wet weather payments when people can't work to reflect the minimum wage. New Zealand Apples and Pears CEO Alan Pollard says while this is helpful, there may still be issues.
The announcement by MSD this morning on added incentives for people who want to move to the industry and work with us is encouraging. It is a challenge though. A lot of the unemployment's focused on some of the larger metropolitan areas and it's difficult and difficult for them to move. So the incentives will help, but very clearly there'll still be a significant deficit.
According to these students, online ad campaigns targeting them to come fruit picking are hitting the mark.
But with COVID, I've actually lost some of my shifts and I'm having a really hard time finding some more hospitality jobs. So probably looking for a fruit picking job up to the Christmas period if I can't find any other hospitality jobs.
It would be nice to be completely outside and away from where I've been, especially since lockdown.
My friends up in Auckland have decided that with the benefits, they've decided to camper van together and spend the month, treat it like a holiday and work whilst they're there and come back to uni with a lot of money saved up.
Growers are still hoping more RSE workers will be allowed to head over. In Hawke's Bay, they've been campaigning to isolate workers in Angus Inn, a hotel in Hastings. This could have space for a few hundred more workers. Thornhill Contracting's Richard Bibby says the local DHB has given the tick of approval, but fears there may not be enough government workers for it to go ahead just yet.
I'm hearing now it's basically they haven't got the manpower to actually physically with Defence Force and also the police to manage that control. But it's certainly something I think that the health part of it, we appear to have got that covered off, and that's the main part of it.
One tactic, promote your region as one of the best places in the country, as Hastings Mayor Sandra Hazelhurst does.
So, we're just saying this is going to be a great place. Come to Hawke's Bay. We've got a beautiful climate. We've got wonderful things going on here, lots of events, and come and pick our fruit from February through to May.
So, what are you waiting for? New Zealand's regions need you. Mo te hōtaka o te ahi nei, ko Tom Kitchen tēnei.
It is almost 19 minutes past 5 and you're with Checkpoint on RNZ National. We're keen to hear from you about anything you've heard on the programme this evening, but would particularly like to hear from you if you've got family trying to get access to eating disorder treatments. We've heard there that the wait list can be up to 6 months, and the Eating Disorders Association says requests for help have doubled this year. Also on the fruit picking issue, are you keen or not? You can text us on 2101, tweet us at Checkpoint RNZ or email checkpoint@rnz.co.nz. Working from home saw an 8% jump in residential energy demand as office life became more digital. While ditching physical meetings to dial in might mean fewer cars on the road, is it as virtuous as we think? Louise Tanuth reports.
Microsoft, Google, Teams, emails, Zoom, phone calls. This is now our working reality. Whether working from the office or logging on from home, COVID's made the workplace more digital. There's virtual conferences and meetings have moved from the boardroom to video platforms. But does cutting the carbon emissions of travel equate to a greener world? Well, that depends how far you would have travelled and how long you're online for. Dr. Rabi Bajrouche from the University of East London worked out a 1-hour Zoom call between two people on PCs in London has the same carbon footprint as taking a car 2 kilometres or taking a train 10 kilometres. The other sting, our devices rely on energy to operate all the time, and so does the content we create and view. To put it in perspective, Dr. Bajrouche told 9 to Noon he's also done some sums on the most watched video on YouTube, the song Despacito. It's been viewed 7 billion times.
The energy consumed to view that video clip, just one video clip, was 900 gigawatt hours. To put things in perspective, that's the energy consumption of 5 African countries.
Now, here in New Zealand, much of the energy used to power our devices is clean. 84% of electric energy comes from renewable sources, but where the data we generate and consume is stored is another story. Most of it's overseas. Take Microsoft Programs, a common choice for the workplaces. Its closest data centre to us is in Australia, where 80% of electricity relies on coal or natural gas. IT systems analyst and developer Christopher Cookson says location is a significant issue.
That can actually make a big difference to what their emissions profile is likely to be. You've got them based in a country that's using using fossil fuels to generate their electricity, obviously that will be worse than if it's used in somewhere where it's based on renewables.
And not all tech companies allow choice about where the data you generate on a device goes. Microsoft does allow businesses to choose whether or not to use the closest data centre, but that decision's out of the hands of many employees. Meanwhile, for those using Google, there's no choice as to where your data ends up going. It could be anywhere in the world. For those plugging away on Microsoft, soon enough our data won't have to cross the Tasman though. The company has announced plans to build a new data hosting centre in the North Island, in a bid to become carbon negative by 2030. Another downside to working from home, the flurry of emails needed to communicate instead of speaking in person. Christopher Cookson says emails are a big culprit and we should think twice before hitting reply all.
Some servers got to be online the whole time in case someone wants to retrieve that particular email. Picture being worth 1,000 words might be worth 1,000,000 words in terms of how much data needs to get transmitted. People write up a document or something and send that as an attachment when they could have just written a message.
Other ways people can reduce their carbon footprint are using a phone instead of a laptop, turning the quality down on videos and putting your screen on snooze while away from your desk. Auckland University of Technology IT Professor Heido Gutierrez says doing audio only on video conferences helps too.
When you are in a Zoom conference with 40 people and you are listening to someone speak, shutting down your video while you're listening to the other person will make a huge difference because you're talking about several frames per second being transmitted of you just sitting there doing nothing. That cuts down transmission.
But he thinks the verdict's still out on whether we should ditch the office and set up at home.
I don't think we have a final answer as to whether all this working from home offsets the energy that is used in transportation mostly, because you are actually adding also to the energy that is needed to provide all these services.
And with our reliance on digital set to grow, the environmental impact of our online lives might require intervention on a government level. Mō te hōtaka o te ahiahi nei, ko Louise Tenuth, aho.
Well, how green do you think your home office is? That was pretty interesting. And audio only on video calls saves some juice. Yeah, and it means you don't have to get out of your pyjamas as well. Let me know what you think of that and the kind of energy that you're sucking up at home in a home office. Text us on 2101, tweet us at Checkpoint RNZ or email checkpoint@rnz.co.nz. A man who raped a woman in an Auckland motel after going on a date with her has been jailed for 3.5 years. The man, who has interim name suppression, was found guilty of rape after a judge-alone trial in the High Court at Auckland earlier this month. He continues to deny the offending and has already instructed his lawyer to appeal his sentence and conviction. Our court reporter Annika Smith was at today's sentencing and filed this report, and a warning: it does contain some distressing content.
The man met the woman for a date in the viaduct in early 2018. They shared drinks and food, kissing throughout the date, before ending up at a motel in Epsom. The kissing continued in the motel room, but when the woman said she didn't want to take things further, he ignored her rebuttal and raped her. She spoke through court support counsellor Yvonne Urey in the High Court at Auckland today.
At first, I tried to block everything out, as though nothing had happened. I thought that if I didn't think about it, then I was protecting myself.
The woman said she couldn't escape it and would see the man's face when she closed her eyes. Growing paranoid, she would see him again.
I was terrified of telling my story and the unknown of what would come from it. I assumed I would go in once and then move on with my life, with the feeling that I had lifted a weight off my shoulders. Instead, for the next 2 years, my life was consumed by what you did to me.
The woman did go to police, who charged the man with rape. He pleaded not guilty, arguing the night was an otherwise uneventful casual hookup. But Justice Benning found him guilty after a short judge-alone trial earlier this month. The woman said she felt lucky to have the support of her family, friends and the police.
I don't want your sympathy, but I want you to know this hasn't been an easy road for me. It wasn't as easy as walking into the station, telling my story and walking away. It has taken a lot of time, strength tears and outside support to get to where I am today, and to speak about how what you did to me was not okay.
The man continues to deny raping the woman. Today, Justice Venning said it was clear the man had no insight into or remorse for his crime. He jailed him for 3.5 years. The woman ended her victim impact statement by saying she could now close this chapter of her life.
I am now a different person than I was 2 years ago. I am not scared. I am strong. I am not alone. I am loved. I am not held back. I am supported. I have so much to look forward to in my life, and I will not look back. I will never say your name. You don't have any power over me anymore.
The man's lawyer, Tiffany Cooper, confirmed she has instructions to appeal both conviction and sentence. Ātawite ko Te Matua, ko Annika Smith aho.
The row between the Māori Party and the Speaker of the House has continued today, with both sides accusing each other of grandstanding. The minor party is unhappy with the Speaker because Parliament's rules meant they couldn't participate in yesterday's debate without it being considered as their maiden speech. But Trevor Mallard says he made the rules very clear and the Māori Party chose to ignore them. Here's our political reporter Katie Scotcher.
Before Parliament's first debate of the term could even begin, the Māori Party's 2 MPs stormed out of the debating chamber.
Order.
The pair wanted to participate, but because of Parliament's rules, parties with fewer than 6 MPs aren't allowed to speak in the debate unless there's time at the end. The Speaker did, however, work to get the party a slot, the only catch being it would have been recognised as their maiden speech. Māori Party co-leader Debbie Ngārewa-Packer says they should have been given an exemption to do both.
The maiden speech is an extreme honour, and we have hundreds arriving for that next week.
Emails seen by RNZ outline the failed requests for this exemption made by the Māori Party in the days leading up to the debate. And in the House, as the debate was about to start, co-leader Rawiri Waititi started to ask again, only to be blocked by the Speaker.
We think Mallard discriminated us yesterday, and we'll push back about discrimination.
The Speaker of the House, Trevor Mallard, says he made it very clear why he couldn't grant the Māori Party's wish.
There's a very clear set of rules that were very carefully explained to the Māori Party, and they chose to ignore them.
RNZ has seen correspondence from the Clerk of the House to the Māori Party made soon after they walked out of the debating chamber. In the email, the clerk explains how to properly move a motion in the House, which is what Rawiri Waititi failed to do, even providing advice and exact wording. But the Māori Party responded saying they weren't being listened to, and it was unacceptable the Speaker did not properly translate their request before making a ruling. Ms Ngārewa-Packer says this is how they mean to go on.
I think it's okay to be critical of a system that we all make up. And certainly are looking to have some balance and treatment of, in a fair, equitable way.
David Seymour was in the same position as the Māori Party co-leaders in 2014, when he entered Parliament as the ACT leader and first-time MP. Unlike the Māori Party co-leaders, he chose to give his maiden speech in the address and reply debate.
I think that they're going to find people see them as rather tiresome if they carry on with the sort of hijinks that we've heard from them so far.
Mr Seymour also found himself caught out by another of Parliament's rules. As the lone ACT MP, he wasn't entitled to speak to legislation in the debating chamber. MPs from across the House give 12 10-minute speeches when legislation is debated, and the calls are divvied up based on the size of each party. Labour offered Mr Seymour half of one of its calls, giving him 5 minutes to speak on any legislation at any stage. Because the Māori Party has only 2 MPs, it's found itself in the same situation. Leader of the House, Chris Hipkins, has offered them the same deal.
This is a mature approach. It's saying, smaller parties do have a right to speak in Parliament. They do have a right to be able to participate in debate. And as the government, we want to ensure that they have that opportunity.
Mr Seymour says the complicated rules at Parliament can be frustrating for smaller parties, but it's just the way it is.
There'll always be people, and smaller parties who feel they have a lot to say, and the voters didn't give them the space or the proportionality to do so. I guess that's just politics, and I say that as someone who has been there more than anyone in recent memory.
The Māori Party co-leaders are expected to make their maiden speeches next Thursday. Ātui te whare parimata mō te hōtaka o te ahiahi nei, ko Katie Scott Churaho.
And coming up on Checkpoint on RNZ National, why children as young as 8 are waiting weeks to be seen for life-threatening eating disorders like anorexia. We'll have more on this after 6. The Australian government arranges repatriation flights from Europe to get thousands home for Christmas. And the Black Caps welcome the West Indies along with a crowd to Eden Park for their first match in 9 months. We'd love to hear from you about anything that's caught your attention on the program this evening. A lot of you are getting in touch about eating disorder services. Keep your feedback coming. Text us on 2101. Tweet us at Checkpoint RNZ, or the email is checkpoint@rnz.co.nz. Time now for the headlines with Susanna.
The Senior Doctors Union wants the government to be careful about rushing through any structural changes to the health sector. Health Minister Andrew Little has today told the Association of Salaried Medical Specialists he wants proposed changes to take place within 2 years rather than 5. The association says that could add to pressures on health boards and clinicians. The Eating Disorders Association says it is at breaking point due to a surge in the number of young people seeking help. Its chair, Nikki Wilson, says children as young as 8 have to wait months to be seen for life-threatening disorders, such as anorexia nervosa. The association blames the crisis on a shortage of specialist workers and a lack of training for GPs. A contractor hopes an isolation hotel can be set up in Hastings for overseas horticulture workers to help with this year's fruit harvest. The government has given the green light for 2,000 seasonal workers to come into the country. Richard Bibby from Thornhill Contracting says the DHB has approved the Angus Inn for managed isolation, but he understands there is a shortage of workers to staff it. The Finance Minister is very optimistic a trial of regional banking hubs will later be rolled out around the country. Grant Robertson has today launched a hub in Martinborough, which includes ANZ, ASB, BNZ, TSB, Kiwibank and Westpac. 3 other towns taking part in the trial are Twizel, Stoke and Opunake. People struggling to get visas for their overseas partners say they're having to go back into COVID danger zones because they can't get border exemptions. One man whose partner remains in India says there is no logic in New Zealanders running the risk of contracting coronavirus in order to fetch their spouses. The Pakistan cricket team in managed isolation in Christchurch will have to wait until they have a clean bill of health before they can train together again. 6 of the 53-member squad tested positive for COVID-19 yesterday. Those are the latest news headlines on RNZ National. Our next news and weather update is at 6.
Thanks, Susanna. If you're just tuning in, this is Checkpoint and I'm Lisa Owen. And it's time for business news now with Nicholas Poynton. Nicholas, now, I'm really interested in this because I was thinking the same thing. So the government has decided to single out the horticulture sector and there's some incentives there. And what, now other industries would like the same?
Yeah, like you, I thought the same thing. It was probably bound to happen. If you single out one sector, all the others are just going to get jealous. And there have been plenty of industries that we've been speaking to today who've been crying out for similar styled border exemptions to help bring in key specialised workers, and the foremost among them is the construction sector. Okay. If you remember a while back, I spoke to the head of Fletcher Building, and he was talking about then, this is probably about a month ago, he was talking about the government would actually fail to deliver its large-scale infrastructure projects that have been touted as being a really important piece of fiscal stimulus on time and within budget if firms couldn't bring in the necessary specialist staff they need to get those projects going. And so today I spoke to another industry representative who's also added to this doom and gloom picture, and what he was saying was that COVID-19 has delayed and deferred many construction projects, and one of the main reasons of that is obviously the lockdowns, but also not being able to get that staff in. And he says if firms can't get that staff in, it won't just cost firms money, but interestingly, ongoing delays would lead to the specialist staff that we do have in this country maybe bolting over to Australia, where they won't be sitting around and they can probably get work when they want it. And it's not just the construction industry. We also heard from the shipping industry or the freight forwarders industry. And get this has been a story we've talked about plenty on here and been plenty of stories on Checkpoint about it, but they say that the government needs to give the ports of Auckland the green light to recruit from overseas to help that huge backlog we've heard about in the container backlog. So the government may have opened up a can of worms here.
And a door. Because they're letting 2,000 into the horticulture sector.
Yeah,
so...
and there are plenty of sectors now who are now calling for similar style treatment. They're all putting their hands up, and the chances are we're probably going to hear more of this in the coming weeks from different sectors.
Interesting. Okay, so the Commerce Commission has launched an investigation. Cryptocurrencies, Nicholas.
It's a Friday, how can I not,
Yeah, so multi-level marketing schemes. What's that? Pyramid scheme, is it? In simple person's language, we're not allowed to call it that?
Yeah, no, maybe not. No, well,
okay.
Look, it's not a pyramid scheme until, the Commerce Commission probably finds it out. But yeah, this is a story that we actually broke today, that the Commerce Commission has launched a formal investigation into the multi-level marketing scheme known as Lion's Share. And look, while I understand how the scheme works in my head, I don't actually have or possess the vernacular to accurately explain it to people in a way that they will understand. So the simplest way I can put it is that Lion's Share appears to encourage people to pay hundreds of dollars to join this scheme in the hopes that they will be rewarded in cryptocurrencies from each new person they sign up. That's it in a nutshell. And I spoke to a tax expert at Bell Gully, a guy called Campbell Pentney. Now, he's widely regarded as being the real authority on cryptocurrencies in this country.
So you pay for, sorry to interrupt because I know you're in a flow here, but my brain is ticking over quite quickly and I'm thinking, have I got this right? So you pay almost a membership to get into the scheme, and then you hope every other member you get a part of whatever membership they pay to get in the scheme.
It's a simple way of putting it, right? So I spoke to Campbell Pentney.
It's sounding suspiciously like a particular shaped object at this point, but you carry on, Nicholas.
And he says, in his opinion, Lion's Share has the characteristics of a pyramid scheme. And remember, pyramid schemes, they are illegal under the Fair Trading Act. That's because they make money from the recruitment of others, not from a product or a service. And the Commerce Commission, we saw reports about a couple months ago that they'd received complaints about this particular scheme, and there were many concerned parties because this particular scheme operates primarily, we've seen, in South Auckland, and there were concerns, but there was no mention at the time about whether an investigation was going to happen. So it's something that RNZ Business has been badgering the Commerce Commission about, is just to get clarification. Are they planning to take action? Are they acting on those complaints? Are they scratching around? Are they doing background checks? Well, about 48 hours ago, they confirmed to us that yes, they have opened up a formal investigation into Lion's Share. But this is obviously, it's going to be a really interesting space to watch because Lion's Share is an international scheme.
Well, I was going to say, whereabouts is it based?
And that's the thing. It's hard. There are blog posts from people who keep eyes on these sorts of things that suggest that it's originated from a guy based in South Africa. But look, it's a big international scheme. I've heard rumours that there's maybe 100,000 members to the scheme, but the Commerce Commission is looking into the promotion of this scheme in New Zealand. We don't know how many people are implicated, but it's going to be a really interesting space to see how they approach this, given those sort of global challenges that this may present.
Okay, so it's just allegations at the moment, but they're investigating. What happened on the markets today, Nicholas?
So the NZX closed up 38 points to 12,640. Our dollar is at 70 US cents, still holding pretty strong against the greenback. 95 Australian, 52.4 British pence, and Bitcoin, because we've just been talking about it.
Yep.
Yesterday we did see it make a bit of a slide. It was down as low as 23,000 New Zealand dollars for a single Bitcoin. Seen a bit of a rally over the last couple of hours. It's now at 24,427 New Zealand dollars per Bitcoin.
Thanks, Nicholas. Nicholas Poynton with Business News there. Polytechs are trying to make more space available as record numbers sign up for apprenticeships. Since July, when the government made them fees-free for the next 2.5 years, twice as many have taken one on compared to the same time last year, with 17,000 now earning while they are learning. And as reporter Conan Young and cameraman Nathan McKinnon discovered, many new recruits are older and pivoting away from industries decimated by COVID-19.
Tūmaloto Tiatia always wanted to be a plumber, but feeling family pressure to enter a profession, he became an English language teacher instead.
Being a Pacific Islander, growing up in the traditional Samoan family in South Auckland, the pressure for us is to go to university, to get that paper on the wall, make mum and dad happy, even though it's not what you wanted to do.
At the age of 35, Tau was already considering a career change when COVID hit. With the supply of new migrants wanting to learn English suddenly drying up, his hand was forced, and there was nothing for it but to apply for a 6-month pre-trades course at ARTA in Christchurch. Today is his last day on the course, and he's now looking for an employer to take him on as an apprentice. He's hoping his life experience and time as a teacher will give him an advantage over others. And he's confident his mum and dad will still be happy with his new career choice.
I think it's just that whole perception of if you go to university, you wear a tie, it's that prestige and so forth, but it's actually not. Within the trades, if you're talking about security for the long term, there's good money that's here. It's more than just labouring, picking up a shovel, drain lane. You actually got to do a lot of math.
Lawrence Ford waited even longer than Toe before deciding on a career change, opting at the age of 49 to switch from being a painter-decorator to a plumber.
During lockdown, it gave us all an opportunity to think things through. And then I found out basically that the government was going to have to do something to move people from different professions, and retrain. And so it really helped.
Lawrence already has an employer willing to take him on as an apprentice and believes the fact he's not fresh out of school has helped. ARTA's manager of electrical and plumbing trades, Sean Flanagan, says demand is stronger than ever from those looking to make a midlife career change.
Normally we'd still have quite a few spaces leading up to Christmas, and they'd be filled around Christmas or just after. At this stage we are pretty well full for next year, so we're looking at ways that we can actually address those issues and take more students.
Employers are also benefiting. Up to 18,000 of them are being subsidised up to $12,000 in year 1 and $6,000 in year 2 if they take a chance on an apprentice. The owner of Whitehead Plumbing, Mark Whitehead, says after years of struggling to find enough suitable people to take on as apprentices, it's great to have more mature candidates coming through.
It's the difference between, night and day, really. Someone that's come out of school, they don't necessarily always have the same work attitude. They don't have the same communication skills. They might not have the same ethics around working along with other people. Whereas someone that's been in the workforce, they've had those rough edges knocked off them, and they tend to have a greater desire to move forward and learn faster.
Mark Whitehead says of all the trades, plumbing is the one most committed to training up New Zealanders ahead of simply bringing in overseas workers, mostly due to the fact that overseas qualifications don't cut it here. He's flat out with work at the moment, but is waiting to see how many jobs come his way next year before deciding how many apprentices he'll take on. Mō te hōtaka o te ahi, ko Colin Young tēnei.
The future of banking may be here with a regional hub kicking off in Martinborough today, a one-stop shop for customers. The major banks are trialling the joint service for the next year after pressure from the government and a public growing increasingly angry at local branches being shut down. Here's our Deputy Political Editor, Craig McCulloch.
Dave and Anne McGee have seen Wairarapa change over the years.
That used to be the Bank of New Zealand right there on the corner. It's the Bank of New Zealand building, and we need to go back to those towns where it's friendly and it's a community.
The ANZ was down here and it closed, and they had a petition. Everyone said, we don't want, please don't close our bank down. But it's all about making money.
They've seen banks come and go, but mostly go. Martinborough lost its last local branch several years ago, a massive loss to the community.
I know many elderly people who are old, we're in our 60s, older than us, who have not got the ability to go online or use a telephone for internet banking. So you need a reliable, safe place.
Now Martinborough may have that safe place again. Today the major banks launched a regional hub in the town. 6 competitors teaming up to provide a spot for customers to deposit and withdraw cash. The hub hosts a smart ATM, tablets and phones, all based at the local Tourism Info Centre.
This could be the future of banking. This could be the way banks operate in small communities.
Roger Beaumont from the Bankers Association says the trial will run for a year. A similar hub opened in Twizel last week, and another 2 will debut before the year's end, one in Stoke and the other in Opunaki. The banks have faced massive blowback for closing stores and shifting much of their business online. Just a week ago, BNZ announced it was shutting up shop in 40 locations, including many small towns.
Banks don't take any pleasure in having to withdraw services from a smaller community. It just becomes an economic reality when some banks don't even have 10 customers a day. What this does is say, how can we work together to continue to provide a service that otherwise wouldn't be here?
The initiative was brokered by the government as part of its promise to look after the regions. Some had called on the government to get more directly involved. The Finance Minister, Grant Robertson, says he decided on a more collaborative approach.
I'm already very optimistic that we will be able to see this rolled out in other places around New Zealand.
Are you concerned that banks might use this as justification for actually shutting front?
Yeah, and obviously that was something we thought about. The truth is that's happening. And I think this is the time for us to all accept that most of us, do online phone banking. It's not economic for the banks to keep branches open absolutely everywhere. So rather than have nothing, we've got the possibility of a hub like this.
And the opening day seemed to go down well with locals, albeit a few technical hold-ups. Ray Lind, age 92, was one of the first to give it a go.
Very excited for a start.
I was worried it was going to swallow your card.
Yeah, so was I.
One happy customer in this new way of banking. From Martinborough for Checkpoint, Craig McCulloch.
After a 259-day hiatus, the Black Caps finally get to play international cricket again tonight. The first of 3 T20s against the West Indies in Auckland signals the start of a home summer set to feature 17 matches against 4 different nations for the New Zealand team. The break of almost 9 months between Black Caps matches is yet another result of the COVID-19 pandemic, which continues to play its part even as international cricket returns on Kiwi soil. Our very excited sports reporter Clay Wilson is at Eden Park and joins us now. Clay, Auckland's weather, it's not great at the best of times. It can be a little fickle. How are we going tonight?
Kia ora, Lisa. Yeah, Auckland's weather obviously can be pretty moody, and the last week hasn't been great here. The good news is that today has been a beautiful day. The bad news is just in the last half an hour since we've been here at Eden Park, some clouds have closed in. Now, Met Service is forecasting a little sprinkle of rain around 10 o'clock. It looks like that could hold off. There's around 20,000 expected here tonight at Eden Park, and I'm sure for them and those that are going to be watching at home or listening on the radio are hoping that weather will hold off long enough for the game to be completed, which we expect to be around 10 o'clock tonight.
OK, so before we get into the cricket itself, there was a joint announcement from New Zealand and the West Indies teams today, and it related to Black Lives Matter.
Yes, that's right. We learned today that both teams are going to take a knee just before the first ball here tonight. Now, that comes in the context of the West Indies in July playing against England in England, and this came just after the George Floyd death, which of course sparked the Black Lives Matter movement and the fight against racial injustice and social injustice. West Indies took a strong stance there in England, and they've come here and the New Zealand players are keen to support them. So they've decided that they're going to take a knee for these T20 matches, and the New Zealand captain for this T20 series is Tim Southee, and he was asked today why they've decided to support the West Indies in this cause.
It's obviously close to the West Indies cricket side, and something that we're happy to support along with our own stand with the Give Nothing to Racism campaign for New Zealand human rights. So I think the two go well together, and it's something that as I said, we're willing to support the West Indies in, and I'm sure they are with our campaign of Give Nothing to Racism as well. Yeah, we agreed on that. We'll support the West Indies, and we'll take a knee after the umpires call play. So as I said, it's something that's very important to the West Indies side, and something that we're going to support them with over their tour while they're here.
Now, Tim Southee did note that this was just for these 3 T20 matches. That's because there's 2 Test matches to follow, and both regular New Zealand captain Kane Williamson and the West Indies Test captain Jason Holder, who was at the forefront of the West Indies making that push in July in England, are both not playing this series, and we understand they're going to get together before those Test matches and come up with a plan of how they will continue to support the Black Lives Matter movement throughout that Test series.
OK, well, it's been nearly 9 months since the Black Caps played. That's a long tea break, so what are we expecting from them?
Yeah, it has been a long break, but most of these players, including the West Indies players, a lot of them have been playing in either the Caribbean Premier League or the Indian Premier League, which have been going on. Those that haven't have been playing domestic cricket. Domestic cricket started here in New Zealand around a month ago. So while we expect there may be some rust, a lot of these players should still be in pretty good nick, and we should expect a pretty good quality of game here tonight. So I think for most of the players there will be a little bit of rust, but we'll see that hopefully that the players have had some cricket under their belt and they will be able to produce a good show for the people here at Eden Park tonight.
So who are the key players going to be? Because it's not all the usual faces, is it?
No, as I touched on there, Kane Williamson isn't playing in this T20 series, and nor is Trent Boult, and they were both in great form in the Indian Premier League, but they've been rested for the 2 test matches, and that's because there is some significance on the test matches here this summer, with New Zealand trying to push for a place in the World Test Championship final next year. So they're not going to be here, so the New Zealand team is going to have to look to players like Tim Southee and Mitchell Santner with the ball, Ross Taylor, Martin Gupta with the bat. They're going to be senior figures who are going to need to step forward. Another name to watch is Devon Conway. Now, there's been a lot of talk about Devon Conway in the last 2 years. He just became eligible for New Zealand in August, having come from South Africa a little over 3 years ago. A Wellington batsman. He's been scoring runs for fun down in Wellington, the domestic player of the year for the last 2 seasons. And it's likely he's going to play here tonight, and if he does, there's going to be a lot of eyes on him to see how he makes that step up from the domestic game.
Clay, speaking of a lot of eyes, what was it that was spied on the side of the trophy for the winners of this T20 series?
Yeah, this has got a lot of traction, particularly on social media today, especially for fried chicken lovers. Now, KFC are the main sponsor of this series, and we have engraved on the side of this trophy for this series the Colonel Sanders, who of course is the face of Kentucky Fried Chicken. Now, this might catch the attention of Ross Taylor, the senior batsman in the Black Caps, are particularly noted as a fan of KFC. It also brought back memories of Kiwi driver Scott McLaughlin, the Supercars champion, a couple of years ago filled up his trophy with chicken nuggets. So I wonder if we'll see the winner of this series go down to KFC and get a bucket of chicken and fill it up to celebrate.
Classy trophy, Clay. Thanks, Clay. That's Clay Wilson from Eden Park there, waiting on the Black Caps versus West Indies, the first of the 3 T20s coming up. And the weather, as he said, looks like it could hold. It is 7 minutes to 6. I'm Lisa Owen and you're with Checkpoint on RNZ National. We are getting a lot of feedback from you around the issue of eating disorder treatments and the wait to get specialist treatment via the public system. This listener says, I recognise the mum's difficulties with the major lack of medical care for her daughter. It's horrendous, and it's not only with eating disorders. All areas of adolescent and young adult mental health are severely underfunded, ridiculously impossible to access, and scarily absent. Someone else says, we're in the same boat. The public system is overwhelmed. There is not enough qualified people in New Zealand, so they are unable to scale and quality care goes down. Private system at capacity as well. Urgent intervention is needed. And another listener has said that it's this way all the time, routinely, and sometimes worse compared to the story that you shared this afternoon. This is a woman who was trying to get help for her daughter who has anorexia and bulimia and was told it was a 6-month wait in the public system. The listener says, my friend may die due to inadequate services. She is too sick for the eating disorder unit. They require you to be on some way to recovery. The hospital wards don't have the skills to help. It is desperate and grim. Another person says, my friend leaves Sunday for America. She is desperate for treatment and has given up waiting for either public or a professional private help here. She is literally dying in front of my eyes and is risking COVID in the States in the hope that family there will help her with treatment. She, like the teenager in your story, had to get hospitalised because she was near death before she could get admitted into the 9-bed unit here in the South Island. She is very appreciative of the staff she has seen, but the system is completely broken. Please keep investigating this story. Please, says Catherine. Thank you for sharing your stories with us and the feedback. Do keep it coming. You can text us on 2101 or you can tweet us at Checkpoint RNZ. The email address is checkpoint@rnz.co.nz. It's not Friday the 13th, but it is Black Friday in New Zealand, and alongside Boxing Day, today marks one of the biggest shopping days of the year. Black Friday is originally an American tradition where the day after Thanksgiving, retailers throw open their doors to bargain hunters wanting to take advantage of big discounts. Our reporter Alice Stewart and cameraman Simon Rogers went to New Zealand's biggest mall, Sylvia Park, this morning to get amongst it.
After opening their doors at 9 a.m, Sylvia Park was bustling with people looking to do their Christmas shopping early. Lockdowns have encouraged consumers to shop more from home this year, but Sylvia Park Centre Manager Helen Ronald says it's a big day for the shopping mall, with many shoppers looking for a personal buying experience.
People still like to come in and interact and get the excitement of actually being and the gratification of buying it and getting it straight away. Online is obviously it's really convenient for some people, particularly if you're not in the city centres. But there's some deals this year that I've noticed that are actually set shop only.
According to PriceSpy's data from last year's Black Friday, tech gadgets were the most popular items alongside mobile phones, headphones, game consoles, portable speakers and laptops. Helen Ronald is encouraging people to do their Christmas shopping early.
Everybody's got something on sale, which is great. So a lot of stores, like we're standing next to Glasson's, they've got 20% off. Country Road's the same, Zara's the same, So there's just some really good offers out there. The electronics, of course, is always something that everybody focuses on. And the big thing is this year, get in early and do your Christmas shopping.
But not everyone was taking Helen Ronald's advice.
For myself, a gift for myself. I might treat myself, maybe to some chocolate.
Yeah, because Black Friday, everyone comes out Black Friday.
The Commerce Commission says New Zealand's shoppers spent $650 million over 3 days around Black Friday last year. That's more than $400 per person. That's a lot of sweets from this pop-up store, which was selling chocolates and lollies at a discounted price for $1 today, instead of the usual $15 a pop.
No, unfortunately, it's a long queue. So I give up. So far, just a window shopping. When my wife decides, so maybe get something, yeah.
One woman was shopping with her granddaughter, buying clothes and toys.
This is my granddaughter, and she's flown up from Napier, and she loves to go shopping. So we've been to H&M and got 20% off clothing.
But for some, one mall wasn't enough to satisfy them all.
Yeah, we're going into Newmarket. Right now, yeah. Another mall.
The Commerce Commission advises consumers to do their research, shop around and check to make sure that they get the deal they think they are getting before heading out this weekend. For Checkpoint, Alice Stewart.
And we'll get to some more of your feedback now. A lot of you getting in touch, particularly about the issue of eating disorders and access to services. This listener says that she was listening in tears, with tears streaming down her face. As a sufferer of anorexia, trying to access help as an adult is soul-destroying. I've been hospitalised a number of times while waiting for support from specialised services. There are many days where life feels just too hard and like no one gets it. GPs, nurses and medical wards do their best, but often they have no experience. There is so little understanding of eating disorders, I am begging the government to take them seriously. Because like Bridget said, more people will die waiting. Thanks for getting in touch, Megan, and sharing your story. And someone else says, my daughter has been in the mental health treadmill for 7 years. Several suicide attempts, serious ongoing eating disorder and personality disorders, unable to work or study for the past 4 years. Treatment is simply unavailable. If they do get to the top of the list, it only takes one clinician with a different opinion and treatment can be denied. This is a highly intelligent young woman who is unable to support herself or live independently. In the government trying to save money, lives and livelihoods are being lost. It has torn our family apart. And this person says, my GP seemed to want to wait for my daughter to get worse before trying to get her better. She seemed reluctant to give a referral. My daughter was going weekly for weigh-ins but was hiding weights on her to falsify her weight. The GP practice apparently didn't know to look out for what is a common method. By the time we finally got her to the clinic, she was on the cusp of being immediately hospitalised. More on this after 6.
RNZ News at 6, ngā mihi nui ko Susana Leatawa tēnei. The Eating Disorders Association is at breaking point after a surge in the number of young people seeking help. Its chair, Nikki Wilson, says children as young as 8 are having to wait months to be seen for life-threatening disorders such as anorexia nervosa. Ms Wilson says people in the health sector need more funding and education.
We need our GPs to receive more knowledge and education, and they need resourcing and support. They are crying out for help.
Nikki Wilson, the chair of Eating Disorders New Zealand. Health officials have now identified 17 close contacts of the Air New Zealand crew member who tested positive for COVID-19 after arriving in China last week. Genomic results show the person was probably exposed to the virus overseas before arriving in Shanghai on November the 18th, but officials here are taking a precautionary approach. A spokesperson for the Health Ministry says 11 close contacts have so far tested negative, while the other 6 are still pending. The Ministry has sent out 6 push notifications through the COVID Tracer app for locations that were visited by the Air New Zealand worker, and Auckland Regional Public Health is continuing its investigation. New Zealand citizens and residents say they're back to square one as they battle for visas for their overseas partners. Those who do not come from visa waiver countries and do not have partnership visas are struggling to access border exemptions. Jill Bonnet reports.
Immigration lawyer Alistair McClymont says many of those affected have been apart for up to 2 years because they were also caught up in the arranged marriage policy changes last year. One man says many people are resorting to flying into COVID danger zones, such as India, to live, sort visas and return with their partners. He says there's no logic in having New Zealanders run the risk of contracting coronavirus in order to fetch their spouses. Another couple have been apart since their arranged marriage in December 2018. Ko Jill Bonnet ahau.
Fruit growers say it's much cheaper to hire New Zealanders than overseas horticulture workers, but there are not enough of them around. The government today announced it's bringing in 2,000 recognised seasonal employer or RSE workers into the country to help with the harvest. Growers must pay isolation facility costs for each worker and also pay them the living wage of just over $22 an hour. Hawke's Bay grower John Bostock says many New Zealanders are not work ready and they are also difficult to find. He says RSE workers are also fit, able and willing to do the job. A woman who was raped by a man in an Auckland motel has told him he had no power over her anymore. The man was today jailed for 3.5 years after being found guilty of rape at the end of a judge-alone trial earlier this month. Speaking through court support counsellor Yvonne Uri in the High Court at Auckland today, the woman said she could now move on with her life.
I am not scared. I am strong. I am not alone. I am loved. I am not held back. I am supported. I have so much to look forward to in my life, and I will not look back. I will never say your name. You don't have any power over me anymore.
The words of a woman raped by a man in an Auckland motel. The man's lawyer, Tiffany Cooper, has instructions to appeal his conviction and sentence. The US President says he'll voluntarily leave the White House if the Electoral College confirms rival Joe Biden's election win. For the first time in more than 3 weeks, Donald Trump today responded to questions from reporters. He said it would be difficult for him to concede under the circumstances and declined to say whether he'd attend Joe Biden's inauguration. Mr. Trump again repeated his unproven claim that the Democrats and election officials somehow rigged votes in the states he lost.
Massive fraud has been found. We're like a third world country. We're using computer equipment that can be hacked. They talk about glitches. How many glitches did they find? So a glitch. Oh, gee, we had a glitch, 5,000 votes.
Donald Trump repeating his claims about election fraud. China continues to pressure Australian exports, this time imposing massive tariffs on wine. Tensions between Beijing and Canberra have increased significantly this year, as Bill Birtles of ABC reports.
China's Commerce Ministry announced preliminary findings of its anti-dumping investigation, claiming Australian wine has been dumped at low prices in China and it's caused substantial harm to the local industry. It's announced from tomorrow that importers of Australian wine will have to pay an anti-dumping security deposit, akin to a tariff of between 107 and 212%. It's likely to devastate Australia's $1.2 billion annual sales to China, which were already being squeezed squeezed by informal directives for importers not to order more Australian wine.
Bill Birtles with that report. It's 5 minutes past 6. The New Zealand and West Indies cricket teams will both take a knee in support of the Black Lives Matter movement before their 2020 match at Eden Park in Auckland tonight. Both teams met yesterday to discuss how they would recognise the anti-racism movement after the West Indies knelt to show their support before their matches in England this year. It will be the Black Caps' first international match in 8 months. The Windies are the current T20 world champions, and Black Caps batsman Ross Taylor says the tourists' experience will level out any hometown advantage.
New Zealand is a little bit different to come and play. There's little things that you need to tweak here and there, but they're a pretty experienced lineup. 2 World Cups they've won. A lot of those players are still around as well.
The match starts at 7 p.m. The All Blacks captain Sam Cane says they're more motivated than ever after suffering the ignominy of 2 straight defeats for the first time since 2011. They take on Argentina in their Tri-Nations clash tomorrow night in Newcastle, staring down the barrel of a hat-trick of losses for the first time in 22 years following defeats to the Wallabies and Pumas.
Really driven to get a performance that we're proud of as a team. Last 2 games, the feeling is just horrible, and there'd be nothing worse than feeling that again leading into summer. So, but we're just driven to try and put a performance that we're proud of and get it right.
Sam Cane, the All Blacks captain. That's the news.
Tonight on Nights, actress Antonia Preble selects the mixtape. The late jazz pianist Phil Broadhurst is our Friday Night Live act, recorded before his death in concert at Massey University. And because international day-night cricket began on this day in 1979, we have a Sonic Tonic dedicated to illumination. So join me, Brian Crump, shining a light on your Friday night. Afternoon news at 7 on RNZ National.
Now the short forecast from NZers to midnight tomorrow. Northlands to Taranaki, also Coromandel, Bay of Plenty and Central High Country. Generally fine, isolated showers this evening. Gisborne and Hawke's Bay mainly fine, a few showers spreading north tonight, clearing tomorrow morning. Whanganui to Wellington and Wairarapa, fine spells. Isolated showers developing and turning to rain for a time tonight, then becoming fine tomorrow morning. For Marlborough and Nelson, mostly fine. Showers about coastal Marlborough tonight. Buller, Westland and Fiordland, fine apart from isolated showers. However, rain spreading north tomorrow afternoon and evening, possibly heavy. Canterbury, Otago and Southland, periods of rain or showers tonight, possibly heavy and thundery. High cloud tomorrow, scattered rain in the afternoon or evening. Chatham Islands, showers. RNZ National, it's 8 minutes past 6.
Thanks, Susanna. Kia ora anō. This is Checkpoint and I'm Lisa Owen. The number of people with eating disorders seeking help has at least doubled this year, pushing treatment services to breaking point, according to a support group. The Eating Disorders Association says children as young as 8 are waiting weeks or months for specialist treatment for life-threatening eating disorders like anorexia. It's calling on the government to set up a specialist-led panel to investigate ways of providing better services and treatment for eating disorders, which have the highest mortality rate of all psychiatric illnesses. The association chair, Nikki Wilson, says the numbers needing help have skyrocketed in all age groups.
It really is at crisis point. We're really concerned. EDANs are a voluntary organisation. We have a support line where people ring us or send in emails asking for help, support, information when they have a loved one with an eating disorder. So what we're finding is, compared to this time last year, we have 4 times the number of calls to our helplines. Really busy, and we know that the DHB services are experiencing at least double the demand on their services this year, and private clinics, of which there are 3 or 4 in New Zealand only, are reporting 3 to 4 times what they have experienced, the same time last year. Really desperate, and people are having a long wait for treatment when they receive a diagnosis.
Right, so that level of demand, you've touched on it, but what is a long wait? What would be the ideal situation, and what is it in reality?
Eating disorders are treatable illnesses. And when somebody is diagnosed promptly and referred to evidence-based treatment immediately, and by immediately I think like any life-threatening illness, we're talking about very, very quickly, within a week or two, then people become, the suffering is less, the severity of illness is less, the length of time that people are unwell is reduced, and they get better quickly. At the moment, people are waiting 6 to 8 weeks, up to, we've heard cases of people waiting up to 9 months to be seen in the DHB-funded specialty services for treatment.
And what is the fear there?
People are becoming very, very ill and actually ending up in hospital with in a life-threatening situation and requiring far greater, obviously, intervention and length of treatment than would have been necessary otherwise. And obviously the suffering is enormous for the individual and also for their family. It's very, very difficult indeed. And it's unnecessary. The services simply are overwhelmed. People are working within them are passionate and hardworking, and they just do not have the capacity to meet the demand. And we have been working proactively with the services, and we've had a meeting this morning with clinicians from the up and down the country, meeting to talk about solutions to, in the short term, to bridge the gap and find ways to alleviate the suffering and to get people into treatment more quickly. And long term, we are looking for a government-led review of services.
So are you telling me that lives are at risk as a result of there being insufficient services for eating disorders in this country right now?
Yes, lives are at risk. Lives are at risk, although people are being, one of the things that we are hearing is happening, that while people are waiting for treatment, and they're only waiting, and they may be as young as 8 and as old as 65 or older, they are ending up going to the emergency department, and it's at that point that they are being admitted into hospital for life-saving treatment.
Nikki, tell me about that, those ages that you just mentioned. 8-year-old, and then at the other end of the spectrum in their 60s. What I know this is complicated, but 8 years old, what is driving the demand for services, eating disorder services for 8-year-olds?
Eating disorders affect people of all ages, all genders, all socioeconomic groups, nationalities. Eating disorders have always affected a cross-section of the community. And so there is nothing new about 8-year-olds becoming very, very ill with an eating disorder. And I think that at the moment we are witnessing a larger number of people becoming ill. So we are seeing more of every age group, including those young ones. And because the services are stretched, they are becoming more unwell than they would have if the services were equipped to cope and to get in quickly.
Why has it got so bad?
We don't really know. We think that we know that the cases have been increasing over recent times, over recent years, and services have been becoming more and more stretched. There hasn't been a review for over 10 years of services, was the last time that the government looked at the provision. But particularly since COVID and lockdown, we have seen a surge. And we know that mental health conditions generally have worsened, and we think it's part of that. There's heightened anxiety and uncertainty. There's been a lack of structure and even connection during lockdown. Anxiety and depression have increased in the population generally. So it's the worsening of conditions in some people who are already unwell, and there are new cases either being detected and diagnosed or occurring.
Is it residential treatment that you need, or is it outpatient treatment?
Preferably it's outpatient treatment. If people are detected, if diagnosis is made promptly and people are referred to treatment quickly, the evidence-based treatment for eating disorders is family-based treatment. It's being fed within your community, within your own home, and just normalising life as soon as possible. So outpatient treatment is what we need.
Nikki, you say that you've been meeting with specialists, but what is it that you require from the government?
We are asking the government to review the current services and to understand that the current capacity, the resources that are in the DHB funded eating disorder services are not adequate. They are stretched. Demand is not being met, and we would like to see that led by government. We think the Ministry of Health needs to review what is currently being provided. We made a submission to the mental health inquiry a couple of years ago, and we were disappointed that we didn't see any response to the problems that we were highlighting and some of the solutions that we were suggesting back then. They have not gone away, they've got worse, and we're asking for some attention to this situation.
So, Nikki, that's money, isn't it, that you're talking about?
It is. The workforce needs to be increased, and we need our GPs to receive more knowledge and education, and they need resourcing and support. They are crying out for help. They say they are telling EDANs that they are diagnosing a patient and then holding them and monitoring them on a weekly basis and watching them deteriorate over weeks as they're waiting for them to get into treatment.
And that's Nikki Wilson from the Eating Disorders Association. New Zealand citizens or residents say they are back to square one as they battle for visas for their overseas partners. And some are crying foul over a two-tier system, allowing border exemptions to partners from richer visa waiver countries. Those left behind say they're resorting to flying into COVID danger zones to live, sort visas and return with their partners. Jill Bonnet explains.
It's a long, lonely wait for many couples separated by border closures. This man, who asked not to be named, has been waiting since his arranged marriage in May 2019 for his wife to be allowed to join him.
They're allowing the partners to travel themselves from 60 visa waiver countries. So if you're from States, if you're from UK and things, a partner can travel alone.
He says that's had a possibly unforeseen and dangerous consequence, as people from the unlucky non-visa waiver countries can't wait for their partners to come to them.
Everyone is now travelling back to India. That's the only option immigration is telling us. So when you travel back to India, when you reach there, apply visa from there, wait for a couple of months until they're approved and travel together with your partner. Like, that's a stupid thing. Why you want to put two lives at risk? Why you want a New Zealander to travel back to India to fetch your partner and come back? What's the logic behind that?
He says that's a common path being taken among the 2,000-strong Facebook group of affected couples. It's what this New Zealand citizen did, costing him $6,000 in flights to his home country and quarantine, in the hope of returning with his wife, who he married 2 years ago. But he came back empty-handed.
It's happening for the third time now. I've been back home 3 times, but 3 times unsuccessful. So you end up spending all your saving, 1 year saving, and then you come back without any result.
Immigration lawyer Alistair McClymont says for that man and others, it's not the first time their hopes were raised and dashed. Partnership decision-making was changed 18 months ago, but political heat last November led the government to announce they could instead get visitor visas.
There are a number of people who have been caught twice. I was talking to a client this morning who had gone to Pakistan to get married. Immigration New Zealand had first declined his wife's visa because the couple were not living together. Then last November, when the government realised that they'd made a mistake about all of this, they then granted this woman a general visitor's visa.
That decision, affecting up to 1,300 people, was to give couples the chance to live together in New Zealand and use that time to meet the requirements for a partnership visa. It's partly that solution that has led to another year apart. When the border closed, they only held visitor visas, which have since expired, and subsequent changes to allow partnership visa holders in have not helped them. Mr McClymont says his client, and others like them, are now being punished a second time for the culturally arranged marriage they're in.
The New Zealand citizen sponsor has just recently gone back to Pakistan to spend time with his wife and apply for a travel exemption. He got 1 month's leave from work. He couldn't wait any longer. Immigration was still processing the travel exemption. He had to come back to New Zealand. As soon as he came back to New Zealand to go to work, immigration declined the travel exemption request from his wife because they were unable to travel together as a couple.
He says the system is discriminating against those who are not in Western-style relationships. Immigration Minister Chris Farfoy says he feels for such families, but the government's primary priority is to keep the virus at bay, and he cannot give timeframes for when further changes might be made. He says easing rules around New Zealanders' partners and dependents from Australia and visa waiver countries was one change which was considered manageable. For Checkpoint, Jill Bonnet.
Labour's Andrew Little got his first grilling as Health Minister today as he was quizzed on the sector's bullying and burnout problems. In response, Little is promising to fast-track reforms outlined in the recent Simpson report within the next 18 months to 2 years. Jonathan Mitchell was at the Association of Salaried Medical Specialists annual conference in Wellington and filed this report.
Addressing a crowd of up to 200 people, new Health Minister Andrew Little said New Zealand has a complex health system that needs to become more sustainable. He was confronted about burnout, staff shortages, bullying and the elephant in the room, money.
We still have more work to do to determine the overall future structure of the health and disability system, but the most important thing is to ensure services deliver what New Zealanders need and deserve.
He referenced the Heather Simpson report into the sector, which proposed cutting the number of DHBs. Mr Little admitting he'd like the changes implemented faster than the recommended 5 years.
In my view, we should take 18 months to 2 years to make the foundational changes that we need to make, some of those structural changes, so that the work of establishing processes and practices and culture can then begin.
That's a little concerning for the president of the Association of Salaried Medical Specialists, Professor Murray Barclay. He says major structural change is not a priority and rushing it may add to the pressures on DHBs and clinicians.
It really depends on which of those changes are taken up and how fast it goes, and I think he may need some more input on that.
However, Dr Deborah Powell from the Resident Doctors Association says bring it on, the faster the better.
If we are going to have structural change, and it would appear that we are, then let's get over it and done with.
She says everyone needs to keep their eye on the ultimate goal, better healthcare.
The Simpson report has a lot of good in it, and we wouldn't want to see a whole lot of energy going into prolonged structural change that takes our eye off the rest of the recommendations, all of which have a great deal of value.
Andrew Little doesn't think the sector needs a royal commission into bullying, says funding is ultimately a political decision and welcomes feedback every step of the way. For Checkpoint, called Jonathan Mitchell.
It is 23 minutes past 6 and you're with Checkpoint on RNZ National. Could there really be a black panther or puma living in Canterbury? Last month, Christchurch osteopath Mark Orr was mountain biking on the Perseverance track near Hanmer when he told Checkpoint he saw what looked like a black panther prowling the path ahead of him. The sighting was rubbished by academics who said big wild cats were highly unlikely to survive in the wild in New Zealand. They said what Mr Orr saw was most likely a feral cat. Well, today, at about 2 o'clock, double amputee Mark Ingalls, who works for Hurunui Trails, was doing an interview with a cameraman on the same track. And Mark, well, he joins us now. Mark, your cameraman Kyle was filming, but what was it exactly, leaving no detail out, that you saw?
Well, I mean, it was absolute gold, really. It was, we're just opening the new Southern Cross Trail. It just comes off the end of Perseverance, and we're doing some filming. He stepped back, and then I couldn't believe it. He said, "There's the big black cat," and so I couldn't see anything from where I was sitting. I thought he was pulling my leg. I've got 2 spare ones, and so he kept on talking. Then I saw it run across. It was about 50 metres up the trail, and it was a big black cat. It was a big black cat, and so it was like.
How big, Mark? How big? Because when we're looking at the footage, and if people are watching as well as listening, they'll be able to see this black thing dart across. I mean, to me, from the distance, it looks about the size of a domestic chicken.
Oh, no, it was just a big black house, size of a big black moggy at home. But, it was a good size, and, the worrying thing is that they're out cruising around our heritage forest.
What do you think it was?
it was a big black cat. You know, it was a big black cat.
What kind of black cat, though, Mark?
I don't know. Was it a Mancoon? They were really big. Or was it just your average moggy? But it was just a big black cat. And, I mean, I haven't stopped laughing until I got some of the calls from the media. But other than that, it was absolute gold. After last month and the reporting, man, it just means that we've got black cats. And it is Black Friday for the shoppers, so it was definitely a black cat day for me.
Mark, just to be like, full disclosure, had you been sort of having early beersies, 2 o'clock beersies before you saw the cat?
No, we're on camera. So, that's why I'm not telling you it's a puma. If you'd give me a ring in a few hours' time, and you never know how big it might be then. So
it's safe to be riding your bike out there still, you reckon?
Oh, absolutely. It's everyone should be out there looking for it, really. That's and the more people that are out there, then the less cats we'll have in our forest. That's a good thing.
Have you checked if anybody nearby is missing their moggy?
No, but I'm sure we'll hear about it if they are. But most domestic cats have around about anything up to a 5 kilometre trail that they'll truck out on most days and most nights. So you never know what it will be.
Right. Well, it's a reason for people to visit you, isn't it? And see for themselves, or try and see for themselves what it was. The
only way that people know is to come to Hamner, get on your mountain bike and get out on the trails.
Thanks, Mark. Appreciate your time. That is Mark Ingalls. He's a double amputee. You may remember first guy to summit Everest, I believe, who was a double amputee. He reckons black cat out there. What do we think? Let us know. Text us 2101. Tweet us at Checkpoint RNZ. Check out the video too. We'll put it up on our Facebook page. Difficult to tell how big the cat is. I'll let you decide. More Australians stranded in Europe are being offered flights home next month. Australia is still figuring out how to get tens of thousands of people back. The government has now organised repatriation flights with Qantas that will take off from Germany and France. They'll have to take a coronavirus test before taking off and quarantine at a Darwin facility upon arrival. With more, here's the ABC's Stephanie Bors.
Jo's been living in Italy for more than 2 years, working as a language teacher.
I was having a great life, loved everything, was very happy, and coronavirus came.
The 39-year-old Australian who doesn't want to use her last name was able to work during lockdown. Summer then came and life started to return to a new type of normal. But things changed for Jo. Her visa wasn't renewed in time because government officials were overwhelmed with work and she lost her job. Then some happy news.
I found out that I was expecting my first child with my then partner, and I was really excited. It was really exciting news.
Jo's had a difficult pregnancy, and with medical bills piling up and flights all but impossible to book, she asked the Department of Foreign Affairs for help to get home.
The seriousness of it came when my doctor told me that she would advise me to have a C-section when the baby is born. If that's the case, I will not be able to physically care for a newborn.
Jo was sent an email from DFAT last week offering her the chance to hop on a plane if she could get to Singapore.
I received that email 4 a.m. Naples Italian time. I was asleep. I replied to that email at about 9 a.m. Nobody ever got back to me.
That plane arrived without Jo in Canberra yesterday. Then she got another email. DFAT has now organised 2 Qantas flights in December, one from Germany, the other from France. Australians must make their own way there, and the cost of a ticket is about $2,000. All passengers must get a COVID-19 test no more than 2 days before the flight leaves, and they'll spend a fortnight at the Howard Springs facility just outside of Darwin.
And that report from the ABC. A lot of you getting in touch about REC workers coming to pick fruit. This person says, my daughter took up a fruit picking job in Hawke's Bay. The stories of treatment of workers, how the boss behaves, and it goes on. Not surprised, nobody wants to do it. Another person's got in touch basically to tell us it's not as easy as you think it is. Says it's bloody hard physical work. I worked on an organic apple orchard but was let go after day one. I wasn't fast enough. One needs to be strong and fit enough to move and position a 10-foot ladder, stand maybe 4 feet above the ground on the ladder and use both hands to pick apples. I was using one hand to hold the basket for stability, this person says, which slowed me down considerably. It'll take a while to get up to speed, I think, they say. Another person says their son, 17 years old, tried to get a job picking in the Hawke's Bay with some of their friends, but they were turned away. No response to their applications. We're back Monday. Have a great weekend.
RNZ News headlines at 6:30. Fruit growers say it will cost more to hire RSE workers for whom they have to pay hotel isolation costs, but local fruit pickers are hard to find. Health officials say 11 close contacts of an Air New Zealand worker who tested positive for COVID-19 in China last week are negative, and the other 6 are still pending. Australia's Defence Force has sent notices of likely dismissal to 13 soldiers suspected of being accessories or witnesses to the killings of 39 Afghan civilians by SAS troops. A health notice has been lifted near Pukemiro in Waikato, where a landfill fire had been putting residents at risk since August. Our next news and weather is at 7.
Take the pulse of the day's news every weeknight at 10.
The tie in Parliament became a sort of a marker of your political allegiance.
Live with local, national and international stories as they happen.
I've asked for the investigators' report for when they went and interviewed my perpetrator, and they can't provide it.
Up to date if you're up late. Lately with Karen Hay every weeknight from 10 on RNZ National.
Thanks, Karen. And I'm Brian Crump, getting ready for another night on RNZ National. It's a Friday night, so we've got a Sonic Tonic coming your way after the news. And I can tell you now, because